I hope you're having a phenomenal day. I am, and I bet my guest is also going to be having a phenomenal day today because he's now here on the podcast with me. Steve Baker, how are you?
Yes, I'm doing great, Jim. It is a phenomenal day here in the Ozarks. How are you?
I am phenomenal. I'm doing
Ditto.
well. I'm living my QTR life, and that's going to be the subject of the podcast today. And people are like, "What is that? Is that some new diet or something?" Could be part of it, maybe. And so Steve Baker is an expert in your quality time remaining QTR. Steve, you want to talk a little bit about what QTR is, and then I'm going to get into how I've adopted this into my life and how I tell everybody about it. And before I forget, everybody, in the show notes of this podcast, Steve is offering a freebie. So if you love what we're talking about today, which I imagine you will, especially if you're 45 plus, 50 plus, 60 plus for sure, probably, you're really going to like what we're talking about today. But if you're younger, that's fine because you're going to get a huge head start on me. But it's going to be in the show notes. It's a great takeaway, something you're going to love. And of course, Steve has more after that if you want to engage with him. All right, buddy. So let's talk about QTR, quality time remaining. What are we talking about here?
Well, you have to know the background first, Jim, and I know that you've heard me tell the story before, but for those listening and watching, you kind of have to understand that. Well, if you know anything about me, or if you've ever seen me speak, my family is built on humor and love and having a good time, even in the face of some pretty difficult stuff. And so I guess that's my coping mechanism or something. But quite a while ago, and I think it's 7 or 8 years ago now, my daughter's fiance, don't go stealing that. I'm going to trademark it.
I love it.
His name is Will, and he is an actuary. So when he was in school, I'm like, first of all, I kind of need to Google what an actuary is and what the actuarial sciences are all about. And so he came back on spring break or something, and he was with Madison, and we had dinner. And I'm like, hey, dude, while you're in school, you need to tell me when I'm going to die, because I actually have a spreadsheet that goes to 106 years old. And I just have everybody plotted in there, all the kids and the house, my parents, Joanne's dad, all that kind of stuff. The whole idea is simply, I've got things that I'm looking for along that spreadsheet, and I'm going to, what is the number? So I'm half joking, half not. He thought I was joking, so he graduates, gets a job with a big firm in Chicago, and now he's years later, he's basically giving advice to the largest pension funds in North America. Well, I think that's pretty amazing. Going back just a little bit to 2018, when I speak about this, I talk about, what we were doing on, the day before Halloween in 2018. And, we had just seen A Star is Born, and I was halfway through writing a new book for the great game of business called Get in the Game. I mean, life was really, really good. And that's also the day that I learned I had stage 3 prostate cancer. Now, that whole thing, first of all your people watching have got to be going, good God, I thought this was going to be a fun guy, Wait, that's a mushroom. You know what I mean? It's like, come on, this is not fun at all. Well, in reality, it is just life, right? And so what's interesting is I was going through that process. I was learning a whole lot of stuff about what that particular operation and then the subsequent treatments did to me. And Will at some point said, were you serious about wondering how long you were going to live? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely, especially now. And it turns out, he goes, it's not a problem. I just didn't know you were serious. Well, when I got the numbers, I'm like, this is ridiculous. And now with my medical background, it's like, holy crap, what is the number going to be? So it got me to thinking about it, and then spending time with Howard in July of I guess it was 2022, he encouraged me to formalize this approach that I had been working on, and that's where QTR came from. So quality time remaining is the big idea. And this is the way I think about it, Jim. Knowing how long the game will last dramatically changes how you play. Works
Agreed.
It works in sports. It works in board games. It works in life in general. Because you know what we do when we're young, at least what I did when I was young, was I was living like there was no tomorrow. And frankly, we need to live that way now. Meaning, why don't we do the things that are important and meaningful to us now instead of letting everything else get in the way? And that could be self-sabotage. It could be bad decisions. It could be anything related to us letting work, substances, misery stabilizers, anything, other people's crap and drama. Why do we let that get in the way of our goals? Now, everybody in the phenomenal world or phenomenal universe is going to say, well, yeah, but we set our goals and we go after them. But I'm just suggesting to you that putting it into context of QTR, or quality time remaining, really helps. And so the way the process works is, first we use a calculator that Will, the actuary, helped me create. Then we put everything on a timeline assessment. These are all the things that we're going to have in our freebie in the show notes. And then we look at things like, okay, if this is how long it's going to last, look at Jim. What a good boy doing your homework.
I filled mine out. We'll talk about that in a moment.
Exactly. Then we say, well, a lot of people go through life not even knowing what they want. And this is what I run into on the great game of business side of things, working with small to mid-sized businesses all over the world, is so often people are showing up, working their butts off, and then wondering, where did it all go? What happened to the whole thing? And how did I miss myself in the process? So it's possible to do really, really well and do great at home as well. So I think there's this connection. A lot of people call it work-life balance. I consider it a flow, because it doesn't really stop. One doesn't stop while the other one's going. And that, I think, is evidenced every time you get an emergency phone call, at work about one of the kids being sick, or, your spouse is, dealing with something, in our life, it's stuff like that. Or, a parent needs help, or somebody went to the hospital, or there's a doctor's visit that has to be helped out, or whatever. Well, the other way works the same way, right? As if you're at the soccer game with your kids and you get a work call, how many of you are taking it, right? And so I'm saying is, what if we put things in perspective differently and said, we might as well enjoy ourselves because it's later than you think. The whole QTR process and the whole QTR thing, most people hire me to come in and do keynotes, workshops. Even I've got some companies that have me come in for a couple of days where we work with all their employees and we take them all through the process, which I think is a huge benefit. And some people like to just go to the website at qtrbook.com and pull down the free toolkit, or maybe even buy the 64-page workbook, which I think you're getting into next. So bottom line is, it's a way to look at all aspects of your life based on that idea of, I have only got this much time left. Where am I going to spend it, and who am I going to spend it with? So I think that's a very brief way to get into it, but that's the idea.
As you know, when I heard about QTR, I'm like, yeah, I know. I live this life. You know that we've had a number of conversations, yes. and you probably thought, oh no, Jim was just introduced to QTR by me, and he quickly adopted this. I've really been living this for 20 years, but I'm odd. And Steve, I believe
nailed it, Jim. You just nailed it. You're a weirdo.
I'm a weirdo. Most people are, number one, tied up in their American lifestyle. We operate today in 2023 differently than we did 200 years ago. Yep. Everything is fast-paced. It's materialistic to an extent. Education seems to be important because everyone's going to college now. Of course, you need to get the job. Oh, if you have enough money, why don't you buy that ski house or the lake house, or at least a bass boat? And so we're all involved in all these things. And we go through life and it's always achieve this, achieve that. And if we don't, we feel bad because someone else has. Social media can depress us. What's it all about? But I always bring this up, and it really grounds me. And I think I've told you this before. My son, I won't tell you how old I am, but if you're good at math, you'll figure that. You don't even have to be good at math to figure this out. My son is 22 and my father's 93. And I'm exactly 35 years younger than my father and 35 years older than my son. So you can figure it out. It's pretty simple. If not, I'll put it in the show notes, the math. But in any case, when I look at things, I'm like, okay, I know what my dad's been doing for 20 years.
Right.
Okay. So from about 73 to 93, laying around a lot. I've been able to do things with my son, play tennis and ski and so forth up until this stage.
Yes.
I don't have that time from 22 to 57. That's where I am today. 57 to 93 is going to close in on me real fast.
Yes.
And a lot of people probably don't think about it. Of course, they're like, well, of course, Jim. Yeah. I mean, you're going to get old quick. Well, yeah. So if I'm 60 in less than 3 years, am I good for 15 more years on the ski slopes? Let's do skiing as an example. Maybe, but there aren't a lot of people in their 80s skiing for many reasons. Many are dead. Okay. So let's be fair. So I live in the present. I live every day. I write everything down. I'm a planner. Okay. You got to get this. Is this what's going to be available in the show notes?
It is. Yes.
Okay, great. Great. This is a 4-pager. It's perfect. It's a great start. Then you can go deeper into it.
It's like the tasting menu, right? It gives you a sample of what we're doing in the bigger program. But the thing is you're right, man. Most people, if I could jump in here, Jim, I think what you're describing is a life that I don't even want to live, right? I mean, that's the whole idea behind quality time remaining is really embracing life instead of is living life instead of having life live you, which is where most people are. And you know this, Jim. I spend all my time professionally with CEOs and C-suite executives all around the world. And bottom line is there are so many who just don't have it figured out yet. And look, a lot of younger people are still surviving, right? Mm-hmm. They're taking a job because it pays the right amount, or it's in the right city, or it was the major they had, or whatever. And they wake up and 5 years goes by, 6 years, 10, 15, 20. And by the way, you throw in some kids, aging parents, all the sandwich kind of stuff that we feel, right? We got pressure up and down the line. It's like we lose ourselves, we lose our relationships, we lose our health, we lose our money, whatever it is. And everybody that is watching this knows that, Howard teaches the Ziegler life wheel. Part of the program here is we evert that wheel. We turn it inside out and we put the QTR year right in the center. In other words, how much time do I have left? When is that date? Put it right in the middle. You will behave differently. When that wheel is out of balance, we've talked about this a lot, Jim. If you focus only on your career, on your business, what's going to happen? You better watch those relationships. You better, make sure things are happening the way you want, or at least making some progress, and vice versa, man. I mean, if you totally throw yourself into one area of life, something else will have to give. We only have so much time, right? You've always heard the adage, we all have 24 hours in the day. And what I've realized through the years is, and maybe I'm projecting my stuff on everybody, is I spent too many years surviving. Too many, right? You had a different path since you were a young man. You were out there doing different things. I was like just trying to make it to the next paycheck. And once I learned about money, of course, this is all pre-SRC and Great Game of Business and everything else. But the bottom line is, man, looking back, I mean, when I read Stephen Covey's book in the 80s, the first things first, I'm like, did someone send this from heaven? This is exactly what I need, is permission to prioritize me and my life over everything else, because all I was doing was working, and that didn't cut it. So it was, following the QTR is really a culmination of what I've learned and read and lived, and all the people, the successful people that I've met. And I said, what are those things that we need to focus on? And bottom line is, most people don't know who they are or what they want. So some of the exercises that we do in here is we actually have you go through each area of your life: physical, mindset, financial, career, spiritual, all that stuff, in the context of what's your default future 1 year from now if you don't do a thing differently. And then, and I know you've sampled this a little bit, what happens 10 years from now? What does that look like? And in the full course, what we do is we do it in kind of 1 year, 5 year, 10 years, because I want people to get there and go, holy shoot, I know I can't curse on this podcast, but you can Google that. Holy macarolis, what are we doing here? Because my parents were alcoholics and diabetics and this and that, back pain. And I mean, just list all the things you've ever heard or felt. And it is really something, I mean, and you all know someone out there who's remained active, engaged, continues to learn throughout their life, right? That's the person that you probably admire. And then you've got the person who's constantly sick. And I'm not talking about things that are out of their control. I'm talking about totally preventable diseases and conditions. So if we go through a default future and you paint a picture for yourself in each area of your life and you go, 5 to 10 years from now, I'm going to be a mess in these areas. I better get on this. And then we go to a preferred future. What does that look like? Well, I'd like to be able to walk on the beach and play pickleball with my kids and, be on the soccer field for my grandkids or whatever it may be. And it sounds like I'm talking about, as you pointed out, 55 plus. The reality is that's not who I'm talking to. Yes, there are a number of people that are of that age cohort, but I'm talking about people of all levels have been going through this and coming up to me after the speeches and after the workshops and saying, hey, I just want to make sure I understand this correctly. Is this what you're saying? Even my own children who are now 22 to 30 years old, the first thing out of their mouth is, I've got 70 years or something, that's too long. But then you start to go, well, just look at the year out, look at 5 years out. What does that look like? And they start thinking, oh my gosh, you guys had kids by this time or whatever, right? They're starting to put together that there is something more to this. Maybe I need to make a difference here. And one of the things I've encouraged my kids and young people for many, many years is don't survive. Don't take that job for the paycheck. Find you something where you want to live. And, now with post-COVID world, don't worry about owning a house yet. Go and Airbnb for 2 years. You can work from anywhere, right? Anything that would allow them to live the life they want. But the biggest problem people have is they don't know, again, who they are or what they want. So that's a big part of where we spend time is helping people identify what they truly want and what the world has been telling them they want. Totally different things.
I agree. People don't necessarily know where they are. They've been thrown onto the train of life. And it's going choo-choo down the tracks. And this is what my grandfather did, my daddy did, my mommy did, and let's hop on the train. And a lot of it is cultural. I will say that, and it's interesting saying this, some of the younger generations, which means I'm an older meaning there's multiple generations below us, pal. But anyway, some of the younger generations.
I am aware.
Yes. I used to be at the bottom. Of course, we all were, right? But many of the younger people today in our society here in the United States of America they're not rethinking, they're actually thinking differently than their parents.
Oh yes.
They are, I don't want to work in the corporate world forever. I want to do what I like. I don't want to own a house. I want to hop around. I want to go to Europe and I want to go to Asia. I want to see things. I want to experience things. And you know what? Good for you. Exactly. I wasn't allowed to do that. I'll be honest. I wasn't. My father said, you're going to college and you're going to get a job. And at 65, if they still have the watch, you'll get that. And then you get to go on the Alaskan cruise. He didn't quite say that, but that was what was on the menu back then. You know what I'm talking about?
I do.
Right? Everyone works from high school or college to 65. That was always the big number. Now people are saying, and if you go online and look at what some of these young people are saying in blogs or articles, they want to retire at 40, 35. Yes. They don't want to have a corporate job. They want to work from home. And I'm going to throw this out, which is a little off base here, but it has something to do with the conversation that we're talking about. And I firmly believe this. If you really want to have success in your business life, meaning making money and so forth, I wish I had done this. I kind of stumbled upon it and I'm able to do it now in later life, but it's only by chance. And that is do something you really love doing while you're young, become very good at it, and forecast, will that be something someone's willing to pay me a lot of money when I'm older? Because specialists get paid a crap load of money. They do. People on stage like Steve, he gets paid a lot of money. Okay. He goes, but right, you're a specialist, right? And you speak, and that's what you do. And that's a great, great skill to have. And communication's always awesome. If you can communicate, you're in great shape. And so just think about something that may not even pay that well today because you're at a lower level, but the best CPAs, the best doctors, the best lawyers, the best speakers, the best authors, the best singers, the best actors, whatever it is, will get paid the most. And so put in the 10,000 hours while you're young, enjoy your life at the same time. And then when you're older, you can work until you want to, and you don't have to retire at 65.
Yeah, I love it. You're right. They're totally redefining what this means. And to kind of riff on what you just said, if you read about FIRE, FIRE, financially independent, retire early, it's a whole movement with young people, which I admire greatly because they're taking it to the extreme where they say, if I can save 50% of my earnings from, let's say, age 20 or 21, when they get into the workforce, then I'll be able to retire at 40, maybe even 35. And some people, like we have one, Katie Davis, one of our coaches at Great Game of Business, who her and her husband are on that track. They've got kids, they bought a farm, and they are geniuses, in my opinion, and wonderful people who are now giving back to the community at such a young age compared to where I started to really contribute, if you know what I mean. Now, something else, as we talk about this, I think it's not just a reinvention, but it's also a reconsideration of what is important to them. And so, like, I've noticed that that our kids and their group of friends have really a better handle on boundaries than my generation, meaning they will just say no, or they will put up a wall and say, well, this is all the time I have for that, or I don't talk to this person anymore because of X, Y, or Z.
Or they're good at
you
that.
know what I'm saying? It's amazing. I still can't do it. I mean, I'm talking to you.
Yeah, I get it. I know. Because you have to.
No,
yeah.
No, but I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's like
know.
we were raised in a certain way, or I was anyway. And I think about also the ability to blend what the wisdom of the ages is and the opportunity of a new society is. So that when you mentioned the Alaskan cruise, you made me think about my Uncle Charles, who always, since I was a kid, he said he worked for Hughes Aircraft in California. And Uncle Charles said, it doesn't matter what you do. I don't care if you sweep floors, go to work for a nice company that has a good retirement, because back then they had pensions, right? Work for 20 years, buy your lake house, because he bought a lake house at Lake of the Ozarks in the Missouri, and he went back and forth seasonally. And then when he retired, of course, both places were paid for, and he could make his move back and forth. And I'm like going, what a genius. And what a great deal. Now, did I listen to him? No. I always worked for small family-owned companies that weren't my family, and they're didn't know anything about money. It wasn't until, of course, I learned about SRC and the Great Game of Business, where I really learned about money and how life can be better when you're in control of it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I was going to say something when we were younger, the people who were younger than our parents who wanted to do something different, they were called hippies. But the young people, it's true, because they were like, all right, man, like, okay, let's just live free. And the younger generation's doing that in a different way. But I respect it as someone who's becoming an elder in society now, really. I mean, honestly, I'm you and I are now the people who are at the top, age wise, with still having some mental capacity, right? Just some. And so I don't criticize at all the younger generations. And honestly, I did not when I was in my 20s. I was closer to 40 when I said, what the heck am I doing?
Yeah.
Who am I living for?
Ooh, that's a big
one. Who am I living? Am I living for my parents? Like I said, both my parents are still alive and they're healthy. That's another issue, because how long am I going to live? But that's fine. But so if we're talking about QTR, and
it's going to be shorter than you thought.
Yeah. So am I living for what my parents think? My children, my spouse, my neighbors, the Joneses. Do I and so
oh man,
we all get to a point, hopefully, where and it's not true of most people, but most people who get to the point of maturity where they don't care about what other people think, really set themselves free. And in our country, many people are comparing themselves with the guy who just got promoted, the guy who got the new car next door, or they're moving to a new house, or they went to Hawaii on vacation, or married the trophy wife, whatever you're comparing to. We do a lot of that in social media. That's a different subject, but that perpetuates it. And I just ask people to download the freebie from Steve and think about your life. Step back and say, okay, who am I? Where am I in my life with my family? Maybe you're married, children, maybe you're not. How much time do I have left? And you can fill it out. You'll figure it out. How much do I have time left with my significant others? You put all their numbers in as well. And I'm telling you, for most of you, you're going to have a wake-up call, because you're going to be like, if I retire at 65, the average American doesn't live much more than 8 years longer than that, maybe, right? What's the average lifespan of a male?
Yeah, the government doesn't want to. Anyway, if you look at the Social Security life expectancy tables, they would prefer it if you die on time.
Yes.
It sounds bad. I know it sounds bad, but I intend to totally blow that thing out of the water. Most people do. I love what you said, because it kind of goes back to what I talk a lot about on stage, which is, QTR, this quality time remaining process, as Jim pointed out. It's about understanding who you are, what you want, and how to get it in the time that you have. That says, okay, I know how long the game is, so I can play it differently now.
Mm-hmm.
It's never too late, and it's never too early. The reality is just helping people know. I really like how you keep putting it into the perspective of, who are you living for? Because why? I think Dave Ramsey's the one that has a great quote that goes something like, it's time to stop spending money we don't have to impress people we don't even like, with stuff we don't even want, or something along those lines. Well, that's one of the things we talk about in depth in QTR is, who are you living for? Is your happiness and satisfaction dependent on someone else? This gets pretty deep for people, because they really aren't aware of whether they have an internal locus of control or an external locus of control. And if you aren't in control of your own happiness and satisfaction, nobody can fix that for you. This is a you thing. And so it really helps put things in perspective. And when you start to lay your life out on that timeline and you go, wow, I really do want to be, I like how you said, I can play with my kids. Think about, when I grew up, I remember my grandparents, my grandfather on my mom's side. That guy he was born in the 1800s and pulled cannons through France in World War I with horses.
Oh, my goodness.
Kidding. Now, when I knew him, he was blind and deaf and relegated to a chair. But when I see all the pictures of him working in the railroad or pictures of him in the cavalry, he's a vibrant man, Well, the reality was, people didn't live that long back then. And I'm sure he didn't think he was going to live as long as he did. But I don't want to be Grandpa Herschel. You know what I mean? It's like, I want, like my folks who are 88 and healthy and moving every day. I used to think Dad was torturing her by making her mix concrete in a wheelbarrow by hand. Turns out it was their workout program, right? It was like the building and projects and everything. What I'm saying is, we often I don't want to get there. I want to have a plan. I want to be aware of it. And I want to lay things out and say, this is how I stay balanced, not for a year, but over time. How can I work on all of it and give it its due?
It's a marathon, or should be considered one, not a sprint. And we don't want to be huffing and puffing at the end and then dropping dead from a heart attack because we haven't been running that marathon. And so, here's some advice for people. Live your life in the present. Enjoy what you do. If you don't like what you do, figure out pretty quickly something that you can do, even if you have to cut your income in half and still survive. If you can survive, because it's not all about money. It's really more about loving yourself. You have to like and love yourself before you can help others. You need to take care of yourself here and inside. So, mentally and physically.
Yes.
And there is only so much time. And I know when we're young, we don't think about the end. The end could be an unfortunate accident in a car, and you could die in your 20s, or you could live until you're 100. But if you're going to live that long, what's the quality of your life remaining there in your 90s, right? So take care of yourself. And I know this is a lot of work for people because we just want to go to Dunkin' Donuts and have breakfast. All right. Well, right now, I don't even eat breakfast. You're like, why don't you eat breakfast? Because I do intermittent fasting. Studies have shown that's better for longevity, and it'll make me feel better today and actually sharper for a podcast like this today than if I had loaded up on all those carbs and sugar in the morning, or even eggs and bacon. And so I live a very different I live a different lifestyle in America. So and most people don't. And I'll tell you what's really challenging is when you start living intentionally and you believe you're doing the right thing, and you look at other people and you're like, I used to do that. I want to tell them to stop doing that. But it's hard. But through this type of vehicle, where we're talking today on the podcast and through your program, QTR, people who really want to make some changes and really get grounded where they are today presently, how much time they have left, and what they may want to do. And it may not even be a lifestyle change in terms of going to the gym or eating differently. It might just be spending more time with their loved ones, right?
Yeah. It could be reading a book a week or something like that. I mean, the great thing is that everybody's story is different. The reality is that we all have too much distraction. We have resistance. We have lots and lots of procrastination because we got so much to do, and it's very overwhelming. And the powerful thing is if you can just sit down and face. So there's 4 big things that we teach, which is first, you got to embrace your mortality. This isn't going to last forever. So just get okay with it. And then wherever you are on that spectrum, just say, what am I going to do with the time I got left? That's QTR, baby. And then we need to amplify your objectivity, right? We got to say, okay, I am mortal, too bad, but how am I doing, right? So we're going to look at our life and the people in our life, and then we're going to look at all aspects of our life, and we're going to delve into each one and say, okay, what am I doing here? Am I growing or decaying? So step 3 is you got to choose growth over decay. So keep learning, keep moving, right? Basically keep doing the things you know are the right things to do, get enough sleep and drink water and all those things. But this isn't about, I don't have a recipe for health. What I'm saying is it's for you to figure those things out. And this structure allows you to do that. I'm not going to say it's easy. I'm going to say it's simple. It's very straightforward, but it's very thorough because each area of your life has its own page of challenges and questions and prompts for you to figure out what's next. So it's, embrace your mortality, get really objective, and then choose growth. And finally, you've got to learn how to accept your own happiness and satisfaction because most people don't know how to do it. And I got to say, one of the things that I talked about when we were with Howard in Florida was in Sweden, they have a word, it's lagom, Lagom, and it's all about is just right. It's like Goldilocks, right? It's just enough. It's just right. I think Denmark, it's the Danish say hygge, Hygge,
Yep.
and that's like a sense of contentment. It's like Americans are bred to not ever be content. Reality is, I'm not saying I want to grow. I want to grow and get better. That doesn't mean that you can't be happy with your phone or with your home or whatever, or with a relationship. And then finally, the best one is, this brings it home for us, I think, is in the 40s, the guy that actually pioneered artificial intelligence came up with this word, satisfice. So it's sort of like, what is satisfactory and what will suffice? Because it turns out happiness, as I've done this research getting ready for QTR, happiness is not sustainable. It's temporary.
It's a drug.
It's a drug.
You want more and more and more, and there's never an end.
And like you mentioned, social media several times, that's built on dopamine, dopamine's an action drug, right? That's an action hormone. Whereas happiness is driven more like oxytocin and things like that. And it's temporary, but satisfaction can be sustainable. So what I'm saying is, I want to be as happy as possible, but what I really want is that satisfice. It's like I figured out what's good for me. And that's different for everybody. So who are you? What do you want? And how to get it in the time you got remaining? Because when we know how long the game lasts, it radically changes how we play.
I totally agree. I wish we could talk about this more and more and more. Maybe we'll have you back on soon, Steve.
Absolutely. Anytime. Happy to see you and happy to share with the group.
Steve Baker, quality time remaining, QTR. It's that simple. Everything we spoke about that's available gratis, that means free, is in the show notes. And Steve would love to help you. And then if you want to go a step further and really dive into this because this struck you as, holy cow, I need to do something, he is there for you. Steve, as always, thank you so much, my friend. I appreciate it.
It's great to be here, Jim. Thanks so much for having me, man.